Welcome back, everyone, to our second video titled American Democracies. In this video, we're going to talk a bit about statistics of societies and democracies and what made them fail and what made them great, and a few other aspects of what those forefathers wanted to do as they brought this country together. As you look at that history of society, there are three major ideas that predicated the downfall of all major societies in history. They were an obsession with sex and drugs and fiscal irresponsibility. So think about those things. That becomes important, that every major society in history had those problems, and we as a people continue to do those things, or things we need to avoid if we don't want to have that same outcome. Lifetimes of democracy, somewhere between 200 and 250 years. We're currently in year 238. Why did democracies fail? They fail because of the complacency of its citizens to fulfill its civic duties, such as being involved in their local, state, and federal governments, and more so, getting out and voting, but letting someone else take it over because they seem they're so self-consumed, they want to take care of themselves and not worry about the rest of the country. When do those democracies fail? They fail when the majority of the people are on some type of government subsidy. Think of today's statistics, are somewhere around 47% of the total population of this country is on somewhat of a government subsidy. If we want to avoid that same downfall, we need to find a way to get these people off of that, to show them that they can do better on their own. And the programs that we put together as a federal government should be to get those people to be on their own and not become dependent totally. Let's look back when this country was founded. Those founding fathers believed that the purpose of the federal government should be twofold. One was to protect the country and its citizens, and the other was to maintain and develop a transportation system. And I think we've done a very good job at both of those as we went through this country so far. We need to continue to do that. I think as our country ages, some of those infrastructures are aging, we need to update those. The other part that I think is really amazing is financial obligations. They believed that the federal government should borrow no money except in times of war, and it should be repaid as quickly as possible. We have turned that corner and went dramatically the other way and continuing to borrow money as a federal government to support domestic and social programs. As we look at Mr. Titus here came back and he put a cycle of democracy together, what he called it. What I find amazing, and if we look at history, you'll see just how it works. Every democracy started with a faith-based program. It went from faith to courage. You went from courage to liberty. It went from liberty to abundance. From abundance to selfishness. From selfishness to complacency. Complacency to apathy. Apathy to dependence, dependence to bondage. And once you get to that bondage, you are no longer a democracy, but usually sitting under the situation of a monarchy or a dictatorship, and it takes several years before the people get their strength and courage back again and their faith back to come back and form that democracy. So we need to somehow, in this country, look at this and say, what can we do not to fall into that same trap? We're following the pattern pretty well so far, but nothing's saying we can't change. And I think the only way to make that change is to inform the citizens of this country of what it takes to do it, and I believe they'll stand up and get it done. A couple of quotes in here. We look at Mr. Benjamin Franklin. It says, "Only a virtuous people is capable of freedom. As a nation becomes corrupt and vicious, it has more of a need for a master." What he's really saying is that as a country becomes immoral and losing that base that it had to start with, it now needs laws to keep it in line versus it being self-containing and self-administering if you have that morality in society. And Mr. Alexander Tytler, who had that cycle of democracy on that previous screen in here, says capitalism will always fail when the masses figure out how to rob the treasury. And we've gotten so good at that in today's world of what can I get if I vote for this person in an election? What can I get if I vote for that one? We have to get away from that. That's his description of when the masses figure out how to rob the treasury. He's talking about the federal treasury. Let's think of why people left Europe. They were pretty much religious people, but they were being persecuted. They wanted to find a country where they were able to come back and worship any god they wanted to, or if they didn't want to worship any, they didn't have to, but there wouldn't be one religion of the state that you had to be there. They wanted to create a model society that was based on the right conduct of the laws of that supreme creator of the universe. Call it God, call it whatever you wanted to. They believed that there was a superior being to the human race. And they also wanted to create a government that was absent of malice and corruption. Again, that was based on ethics and morality. As we look at our changing society, each year we seem to go a little further of this being permissible and that being permissible. Why do we have that changing value system? Because of diminishing morality. Like anything else, we slowly come into accepting things, and each year, each time something happens, we accept a portion more until all of a sudden we're over the edge and we don't know that it happened. It's called gradualism. It happens in all aspects of our lives. Many times it happens slow enough that we're not cognizant of it happening. I believe that as we look and try to make decisions of what's right and what is wrong, we have to look at that theory of what was once right will always be right. What was once wrong will always be wrong. Ever thought about when we make laws or why we do them, how it's determined what they should be or what's permissible? In the majority of the world, laws, ordinances that are put together have been done so based on the morality and religious values of right and wrong. In other words, we have the objective truth, which is a black and white that tells us what's right. And then we have the subjective truth, which is pretty much an opinion, and anybody can put their own idea, which we've swayed a little bit more to as the years have passed in this country. I'm going to slip in that second one called compassion, which I'm not sure it does a lot, but that would be a form of laws that would say we look for the betterment of the people and compassionate to the people as a good leader should be. And the third one, and probably the second most prominent that we find in the world, is one that's based on power and aggression and subjectivity. We've seen that in many countries, and it's still there today. It's getting better as those citizens see the rest of the world and what it's doing. But there is an inherent number of people and their personalities that they are not happy unless they're in control. They don't want anybody else to get ahead of them. They want to always be in that top spot. So for the most part, if we look at the governments of the world, they're either based on religious and moral values or power and subjectivity. And we as a country, the U.S. was based on the religious and moral values of a Judeo-Christian value system. Do we want to keep that, or do we want to change it? Now, you ever thought about what made America great? A lot of people will talk with freedom and other things, and that's part of it. But we have to look at that base where we were at. We fought for what was right. And when we fought as a country, we fought for moral reasons. We established and abolished laws based on morality. We were a courageous people, and we still are today. We were a very humble people, always knowing that without someone guiding us and that God above us to help us, we wouldn't succeed. We sacrificed, and we still do in many cases today. And we cared about our neighbors. All good virtues that we need to continue to strive to have if we believe we can continue as this country that we know. Let's just take a look at freedom. And why do we think of freedom? I guess I define freedom as a tolerance of unity and morality. We looked at that in that first video a bit, but let's just look at that tolerance. What does that mean? It means we're tolerant of different cultures, different religions, different origins. We come together as a melting pot. That's why we were known that, because we accepted everybody. We were united in cause. We talk about everyone is equal in this country. And in God's eyes, we are. But in this country, we are equal in this side of the law, and that we have the opportunity, or should have that opportunity, to get a good education, to be able to acquire assets and know that they're safe and somebody just can't come and take them from us. What were we united in all those years? We were united in morality, ethics, and I think the one thing that really brought us together as that melting pot was everybody spoke the English language. I think it's wonderful in today's world that we're learning those multiple languages, but we have to have some base in there to bring all these cultures and all these ideas together to unify it. And over the years, that's what has done it. Look at a couple of quotes here. Mr. Gordon Woods, it says, "In a republic, however, each man must somehow be persuaded to submerge his personal wants into the greater good of the whole." And I think we have to look at that when we establish laws, when we live our lives, and when we go to that voting booth. We can't continue to vote for what's good for me and not for our neighbor. We have to come back and look at that whole unified area and say, what's good for the betterment of the country? If I need to sacrifice some things to make the country be better, then that's what I do. And when I'm saying that, I'm not saying to make the government bigger, the government stronger. I'm saying if we need to sacrifice something so that our freedom stays where it used to be and it doesn't deteriorate anymore. That's what I'm looking at. Looking at Mr. Thomas Paine, look at this as one of those aha moments in this video series. And he made this statement probably 10 or 20 years after the U.S. was established, after the Declaration of Independence. It said, "Few Americans had been corrupted with riches the way people had been debilitated in Europe, where all they wanted was luxury, indolence, amusement, and pleasure." I think we all work very hard in this country, but I think we're swaying towards that area, and we need to be careful of that. So thank you for joining us in this second video titled American Democracies. Watch for our third video coming up shortly titled A Moral and Virtuous Government. Thank you.